When you think of the mighty Roman Empire, what comes to mind? Gladiators battling in the Grand Coliseum? Emperors dressed in gold, ruling from a palace? Or perhaps the vast, sprawling empire that once controlled lands from Britain to Egypt? But here's the question that history's greatest minds have been trying to answer for centuries. Why did Rome fall? Was it a result of poor leadership? Was it simply inevitable, the result of destiny? Or were there deeper forces at play? Rome's story is one of glory, expansion, and eventual collapse. It lasted over a millennium, the center of the ancient world. But in the end, it fell gradually, almost unnoticed at first, but eventually in dramatic fashion. In this video, we're going to explore the reasons behind Rome's fall and whether it was just a matter of time or a series of fateful decisions that led to its collapse. To truly understand the fall of Rome, we have to take a step back. Let's first explore the rise of this mighty empire, its foundation, its conquest, and what made Rome the center of the ancient world. Rome's story began in 753 BC in a small settlement by the Tiber River. According to legend, the twins Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf, were the founders of the city. But the real story is more about resilience and ambition than myth. From the very beginning, the Romans had a single goal: to expand, conquer, and dominate. In its early years, Rome was a city-state constantly fighting for survival. But as the centuries passed, something remarkable happened. The Romans didn't just fight for land, they built a society around law, military prowess, and engineering marvels. They developed a government with a senate and a complex legal system that became the backbone of their empire. Rome's military was the key to its success. The Roman legions were unlike any other force in the ancient world. Well-disciplined, highly trained, and ruthlessly efficient, the Roman army expanded the empire into almost every corner of the known world. And with each new conquest came new wealth, resources, and power. But as Rome expanded, it also became more complicated. The empire stretched across 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and ruled over millions of people. It was no longer just a city, it was a complex, multicultural empire held together by the force of law, military might, and trade. By the 3rd century AD, cracks began to appear. One of the main reasons for Rome's eventual downfall was political instability. Emperors came and went with alarming frequency. In fact, during a 50-year period from 235 to 284 AD, Rome had 26 different emperors. That's one new emperor every 2 years. Can you imagine the chaos that would cause? The Roman Empire's size had become its greatest enemy. The empire was simply too large and too diverse to be controlled by a single central government. To solve this, Emperor Diocletian decided to split the empire into 2 halves. The Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Byzantium, later Constantinople. This decision might have seemed practical, but it created even more division. The Western Empire, already struggling with internal corruption and financial instability, became increasingly weak. Meanwhile, the Eastern Empire, what we call the Byzantine Empire, thrived for another 1,000 years. But internal conflict wasn't just about changing leaders. Corruption at all levels of government had eaten away at the empire's foundations. Bribes, greed, and political infighting became the norm. Some emperors even hired mercenaries to protect the empire's borders instead of relying on Roman soldiers, which led to even more weakness. The Senate, once a noble governing body, became a shadow of its former self, filled with men more interested in personal gain than the welfare of the empire. With every act of betrayal, with every corrupt leader, the Roman identity became more fragile. As political instability spread, so did economic decline. Rome, once a hub of trade and innovation, started to crumble under the weight of its own economic problems. The empire was too large, its infrastructure too stretched, and its economy too dependent on slave labor. At its height, Rome's economy flourished. Its vast trade networks brought in gold, silk, and other treasures from across the empire. But as the empire struggled, so did its economy. Rome began to suffer from hyperinflation. The Roman currency was devalued and prices soared. Emperor Diocletian tried to stabilize the economy with price controls, but the damage was already done. The empire also relied heavily on the conquest of new lands to fuel its economy. But as the Romans stopped expanding and began to lose territory, they found themselves unable to support the vast number of soldiers, officials, and citizens who depended on the empire's wealth. By the 4th and 5th centuries AD, Rome was in decline, and the barbarians were at the gates. The Huns, Vandals, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and other tribes from beyond the empire's borders began to push into Roman territory. In 410 AD, the Visigoths sacked the city of Rome, marking the first time in 800 years that Rome had been invaded. Then, in 455 AD, the Vandals did the same. Finally, in 476 AD, the last Roman emperor in the west, Romulus Augustulus, was overthrown by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. But it wasn't just military defeat that caused the fall of Rome. The barbarians weren't the only problem, they were the result of decades of weakening power and mismanagement. As Rome became weaker, these tribes took advantage of the situation. What had once been the most powerful military in the world was now a broken, fragmented force unable to defend its own borders. Another factor contributing to the fall of Rome was the rise of Christianity. In the 4th century AD, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and made it the official religion of the empire. This marked a monumental shift in Roman society. For centuries, Rome had been built on traditional Roman values, honor, duty, and loyalty to the state. But as Christianity spread, it shifted people's focus from worldly power to spiritual salvation. The Christian message emphasized peace, humility, and the afterlife, which weakened the Roman military spirit and the traditional Roman worldview. The shift away from the old Roman gods and values caused division within the empire. Rome's social fabric, already torn by political and economic issues, now began to fray further. Was Rome's fall inevitable? So, was the fall of Rome destined? Was it fate that such a mighty empire, which had once dominated the known world, would one day crumble? Perhaps. Rome's fall wasn't a single event, it was a process that unfolded over centuries. It was a slow decline, the result of poor decisions, internal strife, and external pressures. Rome's leaders failed to adapt to changing circumstances, and its people, once united by pride in their empire, grew divided. But the story of Rome isn't just about its fall, it's about its legacy. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, would survive for another 1,000 years. The ideas of Roman law, Roman architecture, and Roman government still influence us today. Lessons from Rome's fall. The fall of Rome reminds us of one critical truth: no empire, no matter how powerful, is invincible. It shows us that even the mightiest civilizations can fall if they fail to adapt to changing circumstances. The Roman Empire's collapse was not just the result of barbarian invasions or military failure. It was about choices. Choices that led to corruption, economic failure, and a breakdown of unity. But the fall of Rome is also a story of transformation, of how a great civilization can leave behind a lasting legacy that shapes future generations. So, was Rome's fall inevitable? Perhaps. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from it. What do you think? Was the fall of Rome inevitable, or could it have been avoided? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries,